Hello everyone, this is Advocate Rahul Tiwari again. I'm back with my new bunch of students who are one of my bright students from my course. And this time, I have planned something different. In all my videos, you have seen that all these videos were made in Hindi, in my mother tongue. Actually, Hindi is not my mother tongue, it's Bhojpuri, but yeah, for the general audience, my mother tongue, Hindi. But this time, just to have an outreach, I have selected few of my South Indian students and the students from the non-Hindi speaking states so that I can understand the problem related to education at pan-India level. Regarding the education problems in India, at the pan-India level, I have already have done a webinar with Just Corpus, and you can see about it. But it was more about the privatization part and the policy making part. But in this in this workshop, I have selected the students to whom I'm going to interact directly, and I'll ask about their issue. And soon you'll see a similar recording or a similar workshop done regarding the problems of education in Hindi also. So again, this is Advocate Rahul Tiwari again. And before starting, I would like to recite a Sanskrit sloka, which actually deals with the concept of education, and it's let's take it as a language, not some religious. Okay, so the shlok is Apurva Koapi Koshoayam Apurva Koapi Koshoayam Vidyate Tau Bharati where though Vradhi Mayati Shram Mayati Sanchaya. It means, oh Lord Saraswati, your education, your treasure of education is huge. It is astonishing. And once, if we share the knowledge, or if we try to share the knowledge or spread the knowledge, the treasure of knowledge increases. But if we try to preserve the knowledge, then the treasure of knowledge decreases. And that is, my dear friends, the concept of education. The more you share knowledge, the more your knowledge increases. The more you try to preserve the knowledge with yourself, it decreases. Why? Because then you are just limited to that particular knowledge. So, hello again. And before starting, I would request all my participants to mute themselves. Yeah. And all my participants now, one by one, I will unmute you, okay? Because just to avoid the background noise, one by one, you will introduce yourself, okay? And then I will ask one question about the problems you are facing during this COVID period, and then you can ask the questions, okay? So yes, let's start. Please introduce yourself. The first participant.
Good evening, sir. My name is Alisha Sharif.
No, don't say good evening. Say good evening to the audience. It is your program also. Okay, it is for the audience. You will ask the questions to me, but the questions are supposed to address to the whole audience. Okay.
So, good evening, everyone. Myself, Alisha Sharif. I'm from NLU Kochi, graduate.
Yeah, cool. Yes, next.
Good evening, all. Myself, Adira Vijay, and I'm from Sharda Villas Law College, Mysore, a final year student.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rani Tulsi, and I'm a final year student, and I'm studying at DPHPS Law College, Mumbai.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rupa. I'm from STM Law College, Mangalore.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lavanya, and I'm from Ramaya College of Law, Bangalore, and I'm studying in second year.
Lavanya, I would say you are still in college. I would say your extended college is going on. And Anusuya ma'am, if you're watching this, please see your student is doing well in my course, and now I have brought her on the public platform. So now I'll ask one question to all my participants. That's the purpose of organizing such events, because as I keep telling everyone, see, for me, it's very easy to bring a host from, some organization. He'll give a fancy introduction about myself on my YouTube channel, but that is something else. And, he'll give a fancy interview, introduction about myself, that Rahul Tiwari is this, he has achieved this much and all. And then we might end up having a very fruitful conversation. But the thing is, then I decided that when I'm running a course, and my course has close to 498 students, then why shouldn't I give chance to my students to become my co-participants, okay, in this program, and let me give them some kind of exposure of facing camera, because up till now, most of the time, see, they have faced the camera while their research paper presentation, or their presentation in the classes, or during their moot court competition. But coming out and making a presentation at the public platform, it is something else, because till the time most of the students have, not these five, but most of the students have faced the camera just to click selfies. So it was very important to give them exposure, that how is it like to face the camera for a live audience, and how it is like to perform in front of camera when it is recorded. So my first question is, the question is common for everyone, Alisha, Athira, Rani, Rupa, Lavanya, that what is one thing which you are facing in a big issue in your college life, and that too, in this lockdown period, and especially like Alisha, you are pass out now. So what changes you have seen, because most of the students are in first and second year, and you have passed out, so you have seen the physical classroom programs also and the online also. So what's the main thing you have realized that this is a big issue for all the students? Just wait. Let me unmute you. Yes, Alisha, go on.
So if we are talking about the online courses or the education during the lockdown, and when we compare to the physical classes, which till 2020, most of the students, we know, they have attended the physical class, and they know how the teachers would see them and how their friends would see them. But after that 2020, the education system has already dropped out. Like it is the biggest fall of our education system, that the education system has
It has exposed a lot of lacunas, you can want to say. It has exposed a lot of lacunas, or the shortcomings, I would say, in the education.
No, sir. I was meaning like it was like the quality of the education. The quality of the education has fallen. Like
the quality of the education was always questionable, even before that also, isn't it?
Before that, the teachers know the students, and the batchmates or the classmates know them, each other. After
there's some issue in your mic, Alisha. Okay, I'll come back to Alisha again. Yes, Athira, now tell me your answer.
Regarding the education while we are in physical classes, what I feel is there was the difference between both is that in the first case, while we are in regular classes, we have a direct communication with the lecturers or whoever are guiding us. But when it comes to the online classes, we don't have a direct communication, and which ends up in a lot of shows, like we are not able to clear our doubts, or we are not able to focus properly. Because in the other when it is in like physical classes, whenever we have a doubt, we can just ask, we can just interrupt the teacher, we can just excuse, and we can just directly ask. While in case of online classes, it's very tough, and even the explanation part, it's very tough for us to.
You are not able to interact with your colleagues. You are not able to.
Yes, sir.
Actually confined to your home. That's a big issue.
Teachers.
Yeah. And then I guess that's what Alisha wanted. Alisha also wanted to highlight this fact that, because students, and you actually grow together, you grow together with your batchmates. Now you're growing just in front of your laptop screen, and you are at the mercy of the internet connection. Yeah. Okay. Now, Rani. Yes.
So online education means it is only theoretical aspect, and where I missed my practical classes. So this is a problem what I faced during lockdown.
Perfect. Yes, Rupa.
Sir, I feel that in the traditional classroom is the mindset we have to opportunity to. Hello.
Yeah, okay. Speak a bit loudly. Speak confidently. Like, few of the journalists in India who don't have a degree, although they don't have a degree in journalism, but what they do is just come in front of the camera and the nation wants to know. The nation wants to. They just do like this. And the practically we should ask that where is your journalism degree basically? And sometimes I'll tweet him sometimes. So be loud. At least one quality of him you can take. You know, because every person, no matter good or bad, he has some kind of good quality. So Rupa, yeah, speak like loudly, speak confidently. Yeah, you are a confident woman. Yes.
So in the traditional classroom, our mindset is we have the opportunity to build our relationship with each other, to spend with our classmate with the find happiness, their own life, and share your notes and share views with each other. And
It's
so,
like, can I say, have you seen that movie Avenger
yes, sir.
Endgames? So it's like, the Thanos has flipped his finger and everything, like you may be, once the lockdown is over, you may be 22, but, the maturity wise, you will think that you are still 18 because you don't go mature. We don't become mature sitting at home and, facing the camera. We become mature when we grow together with our batchmates, when we make mistake, when we learn from our mistake, right?
Yes, sir.
And how about reading the Bear Acts?
Now it's good, sir.
Good, matlab, you have understood how do you read the Bear Acts? Should I ask questions?
No, sir, but now I'm better than that.
Okay, 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 okay. Okay, then the last participant, Lavanya.
So for me, offline classes are the best because I can interact directly with the teachers, and I can have, if my friends, some of them are very intelligent than me, I can share I can learn from them, and all that happens. But in online, it's only just sitting for 6 to 7 hours in front of camera, and there's no physical activity, nothing, no
I know, I know.
interaction. Yeah, that's one of
I
the
mean, it's
problems.
like watching movies every day,
Yeah, so
you know.
and also the bear act thing. Even I'll start learning that from now on.
You have learning, but how about the face? Do you face any difficulty in reading the Bear Out, or it's like very, I mean,
Yes,
just okay.
yes, sir. I have difficulty in interpreting some words.
I
So
know that's the problem which every law student faces. So
yes,
yes,
sir.
we have designed this workshop in a way that the questions have been allotted to the participant just to, and I have designed these questions in a way that every aspect of education and especially regarding the college life is covered. And this is how you will see that the students will ask the questions and each and every aspect are covered in this. And even after that, if any student feels that they want to suggest anything, or if they have any other question in their mind, they are feel free. They are most welcome to ask. I will not say that that if you ask me question, you become an anti-national. No, I'm your senior. I'm your teacher. So if you ask me questions, it's your job and it's your right to know which article, Article 21. And also RTI is a law. So if you ask me a question, you don't become anti-national. Okay. So I'll start with our most, the grown-up student among this five, Alicia. Ask your questions.
So as your aspect, what is the most important thing in the law as a law student? Like it's internship or the mark of that student in examination?
Marks. Okay, I will say both. See, as I've told in two of my webinars, or I would say the interview, that I had failed in my law school also. Not many people know this because when they see my LinkedIn profile, they say, "Oh wow," and all these. His law that, and even I don't mention that thing because that's not something that I should publicly say keep on endorsing it. That is a mistake I made in my law school, and I regret that mistake, and I regret it every day because I see if I have 1 lakh rupees, if I lose that 1 lakh rupees, I can earn that 1 lakh rupees later. But if I loses my time even by a second, it cannot be, it cannot be taken back. So that is something I regret a lot. But for law student, but after my law school, I completed my LLM with a distinction. Okay, I was a fourth or fifth rank because I don't know the exact ranking, but my percentage was way higher. I scored 83% in my LLM. So that's your distinction marks. Okay, so after getting in distinction, see if someone has failed in the law school and he has just passed his law school by 50%, and if he says that oh no, marks are not important, trust tell me on what authority he is saying that marks are not important. I failed in law school. I completed my master's with distinction. And today I can say, yes, marks and internships are both important. Let me tell you how. If you just study the law, okay, if you just study the law, your theoretical knowledge increases. Okay, that is important because what students are have become crazy and their anxiety level has increased is that they want to learn do extracurricular activities, they want to learn drafting, and then they'll think about doing some research work and then studies. It should be the opposite: studies, research, drafting, then extracurricular activities. That is why it is called extracurricular activities. Okay, so both are important. How? If you just study, then your theoretical knowledge increases. And when you do the internship, you actually see at your college life that how this knowledge is being applied by the advocates, either in law firm or in NGO or at the trial court or at the high court. You see all these things. So that is the practical aspect. But if you do well in your moot courts or you have a few research papers published, in a year, but you are scoring bad marks, you are scoring very poor marks, then what does it indicate? That you do well in parts. You are a talented person, but you do well in parts. You are not a consistent student. But if you have good marks and you do well in your co-curricular activities, what does it indicate? You are a serious student, you perform consistently, and you do well in the other aspects also. So both are proportional to each other. It's not that you just have to focus on one. You have to focus on both. Why? Because both are proportional to each other. Okay, so it's not that you can leave out one thing and you have to just focus on one on the another. You have to focus on both the things. Okay. Yes.
So my next question is that how a law student should start reading, like conceptual clarity.
For conceptual clarity, that's what I keep on saying it to your courses also, that please, and I have, like you have seen that I have actually threatened few of my students that only bare acts, and that is why I teach only by the bare acts, nothing else. Okay, see, because as we were discussing also before this record, before this workshop, that every human being, okay, why is it that some authors are called as leftist, some authors are called as, they say that, oh, this book is quite leftist in nature, it supports the left ideology, or this book supports the right wing ideology. Okay, why is that? But those books are written by a well renowned author. Then why the blame of biasness is imposed on those books or on those authors? Why? Why? Because every human being, no matter how much he tries, he tends to show his either biasness or his prejudice towards his own liking. And his liking can be either by his caste, by his state, by his religion, by his language, or by his ideology. So that is why if you really want to make your concept stronger, first develop for an advocate. who has passed out his law but who is poor at bare trading, he needs, because he has studied all the law subjects, he needs at least 3 to 4 months of practice of developing a developing a bare trading habit. Okay, so it needs he or she needs 3 to 4 months, which I can indicate it's for you. Okay, because you have passed out your law school. Similarly, for the other participants who are studying in law school, not Athira, Athira is also in final year, so she should take 4 5 months. Okay, but for the other three participants, guys, if you are in first to third year, you need at least 1 year because you have just come out of your law school and unfortunately your law school got extended for 2 years. And I know for like 1 more year also because the way situations are going. So please, at least for 1 year, make a habit of doing two things. First, download the app called LiveLaw. Okay, download LiveLaw app and do two things every day. 1 hour, no, not 1 hour, because you're a student. What else will you have in your life except for studies? Huh? I think it should only be the studies, not the other things, which I also did in my college life. But now I'll say that no, it's not for students. Okay. So for students, if you don't want to study, but please make this habit of 3 hours rule every day, 2 hours of direct reading every day. Try to understand. And it's not that you read the Berak, you understood. No. Try to read the Berak. Try to understand, okay, this is written in the Berak. This is the meaning. Fail every day. Doesn't matter. Make notes, but keep it a habit, develop a habit, and 1 hour of serious live law reading. Serious live law reading in the live law app, take a subscription, it will just cost you 1300 bucks. Okay. Know the law section, column sections, and the latest report section. These three things should be mandatory even at this age. Even in my third year of litigation, I have a habit, no matter if there is a birthday at my home, except for the parents, if someone is unwell, some death, some marriage, some any other thing, no matter what, five, even if I spend every day the whole day at the LinkedIn or whole day in the course or doing anything, but 1 hour of live law and 5 to 6 hours minimum, not 5 to 6, like total 5 hours minimum. It is there, 5 hours including the live law. And that's, I'm telling you the minimum part. Reading law. Either I read any subjects, but I read for 5 hours every day, and that is what the student has to do. And you cannot do this thing in 1 day or 2 days or a month. Even a child takes 9 months to come into this, in this world. So it will take at least 1 year to develop this habit. Okay.
So what do you think? What is the purpose of this certification course
Nothing.
and how beneficial they are?
They are scams, just to rob your pocket and just to make quick bucks. Except for Rahul Tiwari. Okay, sorry, I started promoting myself, but yeah. See, the thing is, first, if there is a certificate course being launched, look about the course instructor who is organizing, first the organization who's organizing it. Look at the course instructor who is going to teach it, and gather few information about the course instructor, that whether you will just get a show course of knowledge by that course instructor, or will he actually teach. Gather few information about that particular course instructor and join a course, any certificate course, not for the CV, guys. Trust me, you guys are my student, and don't hope that I'm going to help you just because you have done a certificate course on my from me. No. Certificate course, take this thing in your head. Certificate course are nothing. Certificate course are they are, they add zero value to your CV. Do the certificate course to gain something, some extra knowledge, to learn something, some practical aspect from your senior, to share, to learn from their experience. This should be the only purpose of joining the certificate course, nothing else, or else just for your knowledge, not for your CV. That's zero value. Okay.
So, in online education, we don't get any practical exposure or anything. So, how do we deal with that during this COVID time?
Is when this came into the limelight, no? So we were not, first of all, when the COVID hit the society, we were not ready for the lockdown, and unfortunately, we are still not ready to adapt the online education system. I'll discuss in the later part of the education, later part of this workshop. The thing is that people don't want to understand that what is the basic purpose of online this education, because they have a mentality that why they want to attend the lecture, that they want to go to college, they want to have a good time, not the kingfisher good time. They means good time means spending time with the friends. Okay, so they have this kind of attitude, and the thing is, because of the concept of education has been given in a very wrong way. We have been uh, we have developed a concept of education that education means that which can fetch us a good job, and but the purpose of education is to reform ourselves. So what actually happened in the online classes also, you have also seen that in the batch of 500, the average attendance is 150 to 160, and I keep asking that is there any problem with my teaching or something, and every time I get favorable responses. And when I give the ask about the ratings also, I everyone were like 80% of the students were like 10 on 10, rest were like 9 on 10. I was like, if I'm 9 on 10 or 10 on 10, then why are you not attending the classes? Why? The purpose was law firm set. I'll get a law firm certificate. And I was like, fine, all the best. Let me see what help it will give you when you will have a law firm certificate in your CV without any like zero knowledge. So that's something that a student has to think about it. And most of the students are also like, they log in and they will switch off the camera and the video, and then just leave their laptop at a place, and it will be deemed that they are attending, but it's not the case. Okay. So these were actually, I appreciate that. So very good set of questions, Alicia. And now I'll move, because we have some paucity of time, we'll move to our second participant, who is Athira Vijay. So yes, Athira.
So my first question is, what is your opinion on privatization of education? Do you support it, or are you against it?
See, I've done a webinar on this part also. See, privatization is good. I support privatization, the word privatization. But the thing is, India is neither a capitalist country nor India is a communist country. And in the judgment of people say that, this word socialist and secular was forcefully added in the 42nd amendment by Srimati Indira Gandhi, our former prime minister. No, in the judgment of Keshavananda Bharti, and you are also from like near Kerala or from Karnataka, in the judgment of Keshavananda Bharti versus state of Kerala 1973, it was held that India is a welfare state, which clearly showed that India follows the ideology of socialism. Okay, and India is a secular state. Indian state is a secular in nature. So on all these things makes a basic structure of the constitution. So no, I don't support privatization in education. After that, beyond education and also in healthcare, I support privatization, but not in education. Why? Because privatization, the motive of privatization is profit, and the motive of government schemes are service. So, due to excessive privatization, we see education becoming expensive, and the right to education, which is a fundamental right protected under Article 21, also give an Article 21 subclause, which actually talks about the free and compulsory education up to 14 years of age. But still, in a socialist country, education means either it should be free or it should be affordable. And if it is not affordable, sorry, it does not become accessible. Okay. So next
So
question.
what is the difference between capitalism in education with reference to education?
Capitalism and socialism. Okay. See, it actually shows in our mentality also. Like if you are studying in an expensive school, or the mentality says that if you have paid a huge money for some course, or some college, then we are serious. Why? Because we have paid so much of money. No, the content is education. But when the content of education is clubbed with expensive education, no, then the context of education is not learning. The context of education is, suppose this is education clubbed with the, like, see, this is education and this is expensive education clubbed. Now the context which revolves around it will be to justify the huge fees. Then you will show the seriousness that, oh, I've paid such a huge fees. Then the report is not there. Then you actually go for, like, I've spent so much of money on my education, now I need a job. Now I need a job, to pay back my education. That's the big thing, and that's how the concept of education loan from American education system came into the picture. And now the concept of education loan is being criticized in America, in the sense of, so census of 2011 in India, it shows that only 8% of Indian graduates goes up to the studies up to research degree. Why? Because education has become expensive. People after a graduation degree, they want a job. Why? Because they have spent a lot of money on their education. Now they want to earn money to pay back their parents. Then the purpose of education fails, and the purpose, and that is why we are in socialist country. It's a socialism, welfare of the country, welfare state. So purpose of education is to reform your mind, not to go for some job and a job oriented course. You want to become an educated person, not a technician. Okay, that's the difference. Like, become a technically educated person, you become a technician, and you are ended up being an employee of someone. Education means to reform. Education means to enlighten. Okay, education means to progress. That is the purpose. And also, I'll give you a light about the main aspect. See, capitalism means the means of, or it is defined by the means of production. So in capitalism, means of production of everything in the society is in the private. In the communist countries, the means of production is everything is with the state. And in the socialism, the means of production of those things which are of basic essential of life, such as education, healthcare, defense, energy sector, all these things are controlled by the state, partially invested by the education, and rest can have public-private partnership. So don't you think that concept of socialism should be followed strictly when it comes to healthcare and the education system?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So I have another question.
Okay.
Do you support coaching?
Okay, I'll answer this just wait. See, and let me elaborate my previous answer. See, what actually happens that is why we develop an ideology, no? And we say why private schools are better or public schools are better, private hospitals are better or hospitals are better. And it's because I'm not blaming any particular government, and not the present government also. The issue of excessive privatization has been an issue for everyone in last 30 years. Okay, so we have to blame every government for this. And why private government school level of government school and healthcare has gone down? Why? Because there is a huge investment by private sector in these two areas, in the education and the healthcare. That is why. And even till today, can you expect a better engineering college than an IIT, or a better law institutes than any NLUs, or better medical education than the AIMS, or better management education than IIMs? Then tell me. So, and now coming back to your question, Zafira, coaching is something which is optional, and coaching is again the result of poor quality of education. If the education is given up to the mark, then why do we need coaching? But again, the thing is, coaching is something very private. It's an optional. If someone, it's like if someone is offering his service, if you can afford it, if you want it, go for it. Otherwise, you don't. But when it comes to the education, it is mandatory. It is their right. Your right to coaching is not your fundamental right, but right to education is your fundamental, isn't it? So I just hope this answers your doubt. So now I'll quickly move to our next participants, Miss Rani. Yes, Rani.
Yes, sir. My question is your suggestions to improve the quality of teaching. What's your
There
suggestion?
is a problem in India today, Rani, that earlier it was a proverb that the person who does nothing in his life chooses law, and a person who fails in law, in every field of law, chooses teaching. Why? What's the salary of a professor in private institutes? It's 20, 25,000, 30,000. Do you think the best talented person will be attracted towards teaching, seeing the present remuneration? No. So how do you attract the most talented person from the bunch? First, you increase this. You increase the remuneration. We need strict law that if no matter what, if you are hiring, that in every college there has to be this much amount of teachers or professors. I would not say teachers, the professors. These many professors, like minimum 50 assistant professor has to be there minimum, and the minimum salary of an professor at the starting level should be at least 70 to 80,000. Then see, automatically you will see the best talented person in the field of law, the best talent. You will see that the best talent is automatically being attracted towards this field. Okay, so this is one thing, but this is now hypothetical. What we can do at present at the practical aspect is we can train the current teachers, and we need to provide them extra research funds. We need to train them how to give them proper exposure, that how the law is being interpreted in the in the law schools, and how they need to change their way of teaching. And also we need to increase their research funds. So this is how, this way, in the coming 4-5 years, we can improve the quality of teaching. Okay. Just wait. You're not audible. Yeah, I have muted you now. Please mute.
My next question is suggestions to means your suggestions to increase access to education.
Access to education. Yes. Again, as I said, education is our fundamental right. The government needs policies to curb excessive privatization in the field of education. And if they can't, as means, if they are like, if a private person, if a private player wants to make, if a private player, wants to establish a coaching institute, then who are we to stop it? Then in that case, what they can do is to increase the number of government institute. Okay, it is on the part of government, but also in the part of students. It's like knowledge from wherever you get, you go and grab it. Okay, it is not, the thing is that it should not be the attitude. The student also needs to do the self introspection, that if someone is giving, if someone is given for a very affordable price, or a very cheaper rate, that does not mean the quality is bad. Or if you are enrolled in a course which does not have a huge fee, that does not mean you don't take that course seriously. So a change of attitude is also required on the part of students also. Okay. Just wait. I have to unmute.
Sir, my last question is How good are diplomas offered by the institution?
It depends. Just yeah. Now I'll see. There are many NLUs also who offers diplomas. Okay, they offer diploma like NLS also offers distance learning. They offer a lot of diplomas. In fact, the Nalsar also and many other good ILI Delhi also they offer diploma courses. But ILI is an attendance program, so you have to attend the classes. Not it's not that it's not like the Nalsar and the NLS one where you have to where it will be a distance education. But again, at the same time, you do this diploma courses, but that does not mean it's good for your to some extent it's good for your CV that you get an exposure of these NLUs also, that how these things are taught in the NLUs, how their study materials are developed and all. But the thing is, the purpose should be clear in your head. That first, why you are doing this diploma is why. That you want to do this diploma, why? You want to show that you are a specialized in this particular field. Okay, suppose you want to do specialize in cyber law. I didn't do a diploma because I have LLM in cyber law. Okay, that too in distinction, but that's again a different thing. So you want to do LLM in child rights or medical laws or criminal forensics, then you do this diploma. And don't do this diploma, don't study this diploma courses with the context that yes, then I'll get a good job or I'll get a good placement. No, do these diplomas to learn something new which is not being taught in your syllabus. So if something is taught in your syllabus, then there's no point of doing the diploma. Otherwise, you do the diploma just to show your specialization, or else even if you do the diploma, it should be only for the purpose of learning, nothing else. I just hope, Rani, your answers, I've taken all your questions also. So now I'll move for my fourth participant, Rupa from Karnataka. Yeah. Please unmute yourself. Yeah. Now ask your question.
So my question is related to internship. How students should structure the internship? Do you support unpaid internship?
Okay. First of all, I'll answer this thing. I face this thing a lot. Just wait, I'll answer. First of all, in first year, because you have not studied any law, I would say rather than doing the internship, sit at home and study. Okay, but study law and the BRECs also. Again, the same sequence, BREC and then on the books. But while structuring the internship from your third semester, it should be like at least 2 internships at the trial court, okay, in your district court, and then 1 internship in the high court, then 1 internship in the any law firm, okay, and then after these 4 internships, then decide where your interest lies, whether you want to go in litigation or you want to go in law firm. After the third, and that you after third year, you can decide that no, my attitude is suited for litigation. I will pursue my internships in litigation, and that's when you explore more areas in litigation. You work under tax litigation, you work in corporate litigation, lawyers who are in there in corporate litigation or tax litigation or IPR litigation or criminal or civil litigation. There are a lot of fields now. Or if you are interested in firms, then you target the firms, and then you have to target that yes, these are my top 3 target firms. I have to do internship in these firms to learn as well as to perform so that you get a call back. Because the placement scenarios, apart from few NLUs, it's in a very dicey position at present. Okay. The issue is the problem gets derivated in the field of law also. The senior also believe in the same thing, that the juniors don't need any money. Why they are learning? No, I support unpaid internship. Why? See, if I give you 5,000 money, 5,000 rupees, you can spend it. You can spend whatever you feel like. But if I teach you in your internship about some practical aspect of law, about some drafting, that skill will fetch you 50,000 once you enter into this field. But once you are an advocate, you have enrolled, you are an advocate, your education is Now you have completed the education. Okay, now you are in the field. That's where I strongly feel that it's a very negative practice which is being built, that senior don't pay their juniors in their at their start. They should, I strongly feel that they should at least pay 15 to 20,000 a month, which is like it's the salary of the class 4 less than, which is in fact the less than the salary of class 4 grade 4 employees also. But at least the advocate needs to be paid this much amount of money at even at the start of the career. Unpaid internship, fine, because you are getting an exposure. Okay, you're getting an exposure, and if you like please your seniors with your work ethics, then he can reward you with some stipend, but that's a gift. But internship period is to learn, is to get exposure. But once you are a graduate, I strongly feel it has to be the mandatory paid juniorship, not the unpaid one, because that's where, because I feel that it's an exploitation. Okay, I just hope now the internship part is clear, Rupa. Yeah, just yeah, you are muted.
Sir, my one more question is a fresh graduate related, sir. What should the role of bar council to support them to learn practical skills and get
Very
managed?
yes, yes. I have. When you said the bar council, ultimately the bulb blinked in my head. It's just that when you enroll, suppose I have enrolled in the bar council of Delhi, so I had to pay close to 11,000 rupees as enrollment fees. If I would have enrolled in Haryana, I would have paid 18,000 rupees. If I would have enrolled in UP, I would have paid the enrollment fees of 23,000. So when the Bar Council of India is taking so much fees, like even 11,000 is not a small amount, Rupa, isn't it? So
Yes, sir.
if when the Bar Council and the state bar councils are taking such a huge fees just for the enrollment, I'm not saying that give us the stipend, give the young. See, I had been lucky. I got, I interacted. I was at the right place at the right time, and I came across one of my college senior in my Gurgaon district court who taught me all the basics. Also, Mr. Manish Lamba Bhaiya, and he was very kind to me. He taught me a lot, and I can never ever forget whatever he has taught me. Okay, and that is what is helping me right now. Okay, and he has been very strict to me, but I don't believe in the concept of this unpaid one. And why is that? Because our education system is such that the practical aspects are not taught, and that is why I tell everyone that when you are enrolling in any certificate course, first do the R&D work, that what is the review of the student about the particular instructor, and whether what is your purpose of taking that course, whether you want a certificate or you want to learn something. Okay, so it is the duty of the Bar Council of India or the State Bar Council to conduct such certificate courses, and it should be made mandatory to all the law students to attend it. And the exam needs to be taken, that unless and until you don't clear that exam, not this the joke which is called All India Bar Exam. No, is mass cheating, and this is exam is like in my exams and when I was appearing for the paper, lucky for me, I wanted to actually test my knowledge. I took all the, I would not say I didn't take anything. I took like one full bag of BRX and books. But I actually wanted to test my knowledge. And lucky for me, even without looking the BRX, I was able to solve 43 questions. Passing marks is 43. I strongly feel that bar exams should be made more tougher. Now Alicia will be like, oh, he has given the bar exam, so it's fine. But now my turn is to appear for the bar exam. He wants the bar exams to be tougher. No, no, Alicia, I worked very hard also in my field. But now I want that, no, I should get competition from good advocates. That's a tough bar exams. But okay, jokes apart, it is the duty of the state bar council also to train how the all the draftings are done, how bail applications are filed, how the filing work is done in the courts, how do you identify the jurisdiction, how you draft the injunction suits, how do you draft a divorce petition, how do you draft an FIR, how do you draft a complaint to magistrate, how do you draft a criminal appeal, how do you draft a civil appeal. All these things should be taught mandatory by the state bar council, because they are taking so much money from the students or from the fresh graduate, from enrollment, and they are not teaching anything. That's where the problem lies. Okay. So I just hope like internships and the fresh graduate parts, it's over. I just hope now when you will come at my end, like you, when you will pass out, you will definitely ask the bar council that, please take the money. We don't have any issue, but give us the training, the mandatory training. Yeah. So next.
Sir, one more question. Value of the research in education.
What is this?
Value of research in education.
The value of research. Value of research in education is like value of trust in any relationship. It is the basic foundation. See, now suppose a case is filed in a wrong court. How do you do it? You do the research work. And one of the senior advocates also taught me that lawyers never win the cases by their arguments in the court, but they then win the research done on in their lawyer's chamber. The research is one thing. People say that whatever we study in the law school, it's not applied in the court. I actually want to ask them that then is the rape punished? The offense of rape, is rape punished under 302 in the courts or 376 only? It's 376 only. Murder is punished in 302, not 120. Okay. So whatever we study in the court, it is applied in the whatever we study in the law school, it is applied in the court. But the thing is, we don't know how it is done because we lack the practical skills. Moreover, if you just have the bookish knowledge, then again, you're just a graduate. Don't call yourself a lawyer. Research is one which develops your analytical skills. And that is the main aspect of a lawyer, because in every case, he has to do what? He has to read the facts of the cases. He has to analyze the situation. He has to interpret the law and he has to apply the law. And that is why research skills are most important for any advocates. And I'm not endorsing research skills superficially. I have presented 25 research papers, including 3 research papers in NLS Bangalore. I have got 7 research papers published, all unpaid. Actually, one was paid, but it was a UGC journal. So that's why I decided to go for the paid publication. Otherwise, I always support unpaid publication. My 2 books are under the process of publication. And that is why after this authority, I say research is the most important thing. Otherwise, imagine for a second that if I wouldn't have presented a research paper, forget presenting the research paper, I wouldn't have written a research paper and would have been saying that no, research is very important. And if someone who would have asked, then my brother, how many research papers you would have written? Then it would have become an embarrassing situation, isn't it? So this was this. So now, last but not the least, Lavanya Bhaskar from Ramaiah Institute of Law, the college who once denied education to me. But it's okay. The revenge won't be taken here because Lavanya is my student. So it's a very beautiful relation of student and a teacher. So yes, Lavanya, now ask your questions.
So what do you think should be the role of society for providing accessible education?
First of all, the mentality. The society, we all needs to work upon our mentality that if a school fees is low or it's less, then it does not mean the quality is also bad. And the government, we need to promote. First of all, we need, see, every parent wants to teach, ensure that their kids studies in expensive private school. But like the famous 2 fields in India, education and medical line. But every parents want their son to be an IITian. See the hypocrisy. Okay, you want to get your your kids to be studied in expensive education. Why? Government institutes are not good, but you want your kids to get admitted in either IIT or AIMS or NLU. So that is something we need to work upon it. We need to work upon the our mentality first, because this what is society? We are society. Society is made from individual like us only. And Lavanya, this is not a problem in just in the North India. It is a problem all over. It is problem all across the societies of all the states in India. Second, we need to be aware about the practical aspect. We are just into a rat race that yes, this coaching is good, this college is good, yes, they are charging, and then we cry, oh, this education has become so expensive, isn't it? Oh God, these days education has become so expensive, I must say. Why? We are making education expensive. We are not asking this college these college administration that for what you are charging the building charges, for what you are charging these other capitation charges. We need to yes, they are also running a business, they are running a big business, I would say. Yes, they also need money, but the way they increase the fees, and it was something which was taken consideration by a lot of parents during the lockdown period. Okay, when the school were actually charging a lot of money, even when for the electricity, for the other things, even when the students were staying at home. And see, at one aspect, West Bengal High Court gave another judgment. Gujarat High Court or Delhi High Court, I don't know the other High Court too, which was the High Court. It gave other opinion regarding the same. Why? Because even judges come from the same society. Okay, they are not some aliens who have just dropped from Mars and they have just taken the chair of a chair in the judiciary in the high courts. They are also among from us. Okay, so yeah, next.
So my next question is, what should be the role of the government to curb privatization?
First of all, I gave this suggestion and I was hated by many. I said the girl education should be free. If any college, any college or any school, if it is taking student from a fees from a girl, a fine should be imposed. Trust me. And if you think that no, it's violating the principle of Article 14, then I will say, please go and read Article 15, subclause 3. What does it say? That a parliament has a liberty. Parliament has a liberty to make special laws for women and children. First. Second, it's a Supreme Court verdict also that in every private school, they need to reserve 25% of seat for the poor people. And if you have, please, I would say, because you all are from, non-Hindi speaking state, but still I would, endorse a movie called Hindi Medium, first part of Irfan Khan. Please go and watch that movie. It actually exposes this part of corruption in the school level. That when the courts have said that 25% of the seats are reserved for the poor people in the school, 25% of the beds are reserved for the poor people in the private hospitals, how much it is being followed. And the government needs to be more vigilant on this part. Okay, apart from like promoting more funds for the government educations, like do you know I'm okay, I should not ask that, do you know, no, you are a second year student as of now. Do you actually know that only 5 to 5.5% of our GDP is spent on education? 5%. Now, if someone says that even USS also spent 5% of their GDP, their 5% of GDP, their GDP is of 20 trillion. We had a dream of 5 trillion. I don't know what is the current, statistics, but their 5% was, when I calculated, it was coming out to be like 1/4 of our GDP. Okay, so that's where we need to focus. We need to spend. See, I'll give you an example, another example. An average middle class family who earns 70 to 80,000 a month. Okay, so considering he earns 8 to 9 lakhs a year, 7 to 8 lakhs a year, that family has 2 kids. Now, any private college, they charge 1 lakh rupees fees. Okay, so that family spends 2 lakh rupees every year on their children's education, which is close to 25 to 40% of their total earning. And now if you say that how will the country run, That is why we are paying tax. Why we are paying tax? We cannot go and make colleges and schools. It's the government's duty. For that purpose only, we are paying tax to the government. Okay, and that is the basic duty of the government, isn't it? So yes, this is what my suggestion and my expectation and my, I would say, my question also from the government. Okay. Are you okay? Let me unmute you. Yes, ask your question. Okay, okay. You are still. Please, yeah, mute yourself. Ask your question. Lavanya, are you there?
Sir, that's only 2 questions.
Okay, okay. Ask your. You can please speak. Yes. What's your question?
That's it, sir.
Huh?
Only that much, sir. 2 questions.
You're done with your questions.
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much. So now, anyone, apart from this, if you have any other suggestions or any other questions, feel free to ask, and then we will end this meeting and with my own personal opinion about the education, especially during the COVID time. Any other suggestion? You can raise the hand. Yes, yes. I was expecting Athira also. Yes, Alicia.
So as you said that you don't support unpaid internships.
Yeah.
Okay.
Internship means
No, you support unpaid internships.
before fifth year. Before fifth year, it's fine.
Okay,
But
before fifth year.
But once you are done with your college education, when you have the LLB degree, then no unpaid. Nothing like this unpaid one. Because why?
Okay, sir.
Now you have this degree also, you should be paid. Because and the unpaid part, you are actually learning. You are at the you consider that school does not pay you money to study, right? That is my concept. It's not that the unpaid should be there or not. It's no. But once a person graduates, he has a degree, then no unpaid juniorship. Now,
Internship during the college time also. Why don't the seniors can't pay for their traveling allowance?
okay, the
Students almost have to pay their college fees for their study, and for extra getting knowledge or extra practical knowledge, they do internships. They have to travel very much, and they have to do research and paperwork, everything. Why don't
explain. Giving travel allowances. Okay, giving travel allowances is a personal discretion, which I feel they should do if a student is spending a lot. Like if student is spending like close to 150 to 200 rupees every day, it comes out to be 6 to 7,000 just on the traveling part. So the senior should not pay. Senior should at least reimburse that much of money. But see, when you are doing an internship, you are learning something. But once you are a graduate, you are expected to add value to someone's chamber, or even if you are not adding value to a chamber, even if you look at the other field, engineering also, medical also, even during the trainee period, they are paid a stipend. So once you are a graduate, even if you are not adding any value to any senior's chamber, still you should be paid. But if you are a student, then travel allowance or a basic stipend, it's a personal discretion. But even if it is, I don't take it in a literal manner. It's like even if it's not paid internship, it should not bother you. Because during internship, not during juniorship, you are at the stage of learning. You go to the court for the first time. You see, okay, this is court. This is an advocate. Okay, you start from such a level. So now I hope my intentions are clear. You know, like, and thank God you asked. Otherwise, how many people would have unliked the video? Okay. Yeah. Yes, Sathira. Ask it up.
So, what would be your suggestion, or like what suggestion would you make to change the syllabus which we are learning right now, just to create an introduction to the students when they go to the court?
Like we can have Viva exams where students are given, okay, and it should be conducted throughout the year. Like students are given the in especially in the third year that okay, read this BEREC and tell me what does it mean. It should be made mandatory. BEREC reading is mandatory. And in the final year, when they teach, like suppose when they are teaching criminal appeals, okay, then they also should teach how a criminal appeal is drafted. And the drafting part in the district court is different, and format is different for the high court. So they should teach the drafting part also, and that is how the syllabus will become interesting. Like suppose if they have taught you the drafting, then in the next class they sorry, in one class they have taught you the criminal appeal, in the next class they teach you how the appeal is being drafted. That is how most of the things are completed. Any other question apart from this, Athira?
No, sir. No, sir.
So this was actually, now I'll put both these things in the caption so that the student see, okay, unpaid internship and unpaid juniorship are different and the practical aspect. Thanks, Alisha, for saving me. Okay. See, although people will unlike, there will be few people who don't like the video, but that's fine. But now I feel we have made an inclusive video. Yes, Rani, be very quick.
So how professionality, the online mode is expensive compared to offline?
You see, online mode is expensive. Why? Because whatever money you are giving, and when you give it for the offline education, you go to the college, you grow with your batchmates. But whatever money you are giving to the college, if they are not teaching you the practical aspect, because if the destiny is depriving you from the practical aspect, it becomes the duty of your mentor to give you something extra at the online medium. Not just that coming out to the online medium, reading out the PowerPoint slides that yes, this is the law, this section, this section, this. No. Okay. And that is where online education becomes expensive. Why? Because whatever fees they are taking, it is worthless. It's of no use. Okay. Yes, I'm unmuting you. Actually, we have.
I have one more question. It's a general question. If the family have one more, it means if a family has more kids and if they have one smartphone, then how it will be? That other.
I am not even married, and that is where family planning comes into the picture. And actually, see that depends. They need to prioritize. Like if someone is having the exam, okay, then he should be made accessible. All this, and yes, regarding to accessible to the smartphone. Okay, because see, Rani, what actually happens that especially earlier, what was the problem that going to the school? Now it is mandatory for the student to have a good internet connection. If you don't have a good internet connection, then though you don't get anything and you have to pay the fees. So that's where it's become the duty of the schools also, that if they're paying, why, for what purpose they take the fees? To give you education, to give you the to facilitate the education, na? So it becomes their duty also that they can organize like a common computer, a common network, if not computer, common network for its students. Okay, because providing a computer to everyone will be very expensive, but they can provide connections to, like 5 to 6 families. Okay, 5 to 6 families for that purpose. Okay, so that everyone gets the education. Okay, so thank you everyone. I just hope you have enjoyed this video, although this video was a bit long, but that was the purpose. We wanted to cover the aspect of education from every aspect. So again, now I'll take your leave. This is Advocate Rahul Tiwari again. Please watch, like, share, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you everyone.